Allie. Join me as I show you a very simple right angle weave pattern to create very cute hearts. This can be done as a bracelet or even turned into a necklace and earrings. If you need any of the materials or want to check out the Potomac crystals used, go ahead and look below the video in the description. We'll put links there to the exact materials used in this design. Gather everything up on a nice working surface like a bead on a board, and we'll get ready to get started. So to begin our heart right angle weave bracelet, we are going to be using 4mm beads. I have 2 bicones, one of my satin pearls, and 15 OC beads along with my clasp. And that's Potomac push clasp. I have a stop bead on some size 6 dragon thread, and I'm leaving myself about 10 inches at the end in order to put my clasp on after the fact. We're going to begin with right angle weave. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to grab one of your red bead. I want you to grab a second red bead, a 15-0, then one of your pearls, a 15-0, and then a third red bead. What this is going to do is give us our first foundational block. We're doing right angle weave, and we're doing a slight modification because of the seed beads added. From here, we are going to sew back through, starting from the stop bead, going towards the pearl, the first, second 4mm bead, first 15-0, and come out through our pearl. What this is going to do is allow us to exit on the right-hand side of our box. So this is going to be the right-hand side of our first box. The bead that you're coming out of, which we're going to switch between our pink and our fuchsia and our cyan beads here, you're always going to pick up one of those that you're coming out of. So I'm going to pick up one of my satin pearl. Then I'm going to pick up my next color crystal, which for me is going to be my fuchsia. And that opposite bead is always going to have 2 15s on either side. And then I'm going to pick up another one of my pearls. So the pattern is that you are picking up your pearl, alternate color, pearl. The next one we'll pick up the crystal color, pearl, crystal color. So whatever you're coming out of, your thread and needle, that's the color that you're putting on 2 of. The alternate color that goes next is going to be the opposite bead. From here, we're going to take our thread and needle, ignore the 15-0s, and we're going to sew down through that bead that our thread is currently coming out of. That's to complete our right angle unit. That's going to create another square. That square then kind of turn to the side just a tiny bit. We're going to sew through the bottom of that square and up, so we're coming out through our 4mm bead. You always want to come out through the bead on the right-hand side. So when you build, we're always coming out through that right-hand side bead. Now we're on our pink or our fuchsia, so we're going to add one more of our 4mm bead, the alternate color, which is going to be our pearl. And that alternate color always has the 15-0s on either side. Then another one of our fuchsia beads. Ignore the 15-0s, they're just used to separate out our hearts. And so back up through that 4mm bead that your thread is coming out of. Once you're through there, my thread wants to get tangled in my pliers here. Once you're through there, you're going to give a nice tight pull because you want those hearts to be nice and tight. So through the next bead in line, which is always going to be at the top or the bottom, it rotates. And then once again, come down through the 15 and go through the last bead on the right-hand side. When you turn it now, you start to see your pretty little hearts. So we'll do one more, and then it's just repetitive. Coming out of the pearl, put on a pearl. Grab a 15, and then your alternate color. You can obviously do these all with the same color if you want. Putting a 15 around each, again, just to help separate out that heart design a little bit. Grab another 4mm pearl, go in from the opposite side, sew through that pearl. Just like all right angle weave, you're going to sew and come out the right-hand side of that block. I'm going to sew through the bottom bead, and I'm going to sew up through the 15 and out through the crystal. Give that nice tight pull, and again, you start to see those beautiful hearts take shape. I'm going to continue on with my pattern, adding in the pearls in between each one of my colored hearts. For this bracelet, I'm going to be using a Potomac's clasp, and this has a spot for a 10mm Rivoli. What I'm going to be using is the Loctite Ultra Gel. pressing down on the sides and depositing some right there in the middle. You can see it didn't take a ton of space. I'm not going the whole way to the outer edge because when I drop this Rivoli in the middle, I'm going to try to center it as much as possible, give it a tiny little spin to spread out that actual glue, and then press down firmly from the top. This way I don't have a ton of glue coming from the outer edge. Once I get to the end, and I'll do this on both sides, I'm going to start with the tongue since my clasp is gluing, and you can see it's a fun fit with this. I have 3 of my 15 OC beads on my needle. From here, I'm going to put on a 4th, and then I'm going to sew up through the end of the clasp. From here, I'm going to sew down through that 4th bead. Add 3 more 15s and wrap around that last pearl. Your thread's very likely to get kind of twisted in that tongue. Just move it out of the way. Give a nice tight pull. We're going to reinforce this multiple times, going up through 1, 2, 3 beads, then going through that 4th, going through the loop of the clasp, over the top, back through that 4th bead that we're sharing, and then down through the 3. I'm going to do this one more time, and again we're going to do the same thing on the other side with our Rivoli, but this time what I'm going to do is reinforce by going through that last line of my right angle weave, just to tighten it up a little bit, and also so that the thread's coming from a different direction. So going through there, skipping over those 15s, because remember they're just a little decoration from the end, going through the 15 here, out the pearl, back up through that pearl or that 15, connecting onto there, going through the loop and coming back down. I'm going to take my stop bead off the other side, attach the other end of the clasp, and then I'll show you how I'm going to tie off the thread. As you finish up the second side, what I like to do with the remainder of my thread here is sew back down into the project. So I've gone through 3 times and done the little V, coming back then around the crystal, down through the pearl, and I'm actually going to use this opportunity to just tighten up the stitches a little bit, going back through my project here. And when I get to the crystals, I'm going to go the whole way around that right angle weave unit, circling around. You can see I'm just reinforcing that thread basically. And I actually like this for a tighter pull, rather. Going through here. And you could also use some of the stretch string with this and do this same technique, but you're not going to be able to reinforce it like this because it's going to get tight. So you can see coming back through when I get to the pearls, just to make that heart stand out even more, I'm just kind of tightening it up. And as I do this, the thread is disappearing because it's going into the project. And also, I don't really need to tie it off very much because it's already twisted back in through the project. It's not going to come out. However, just for precaution, I'm going to sew underneath that loop there, through that right angle unit, making a little loop with my thread, go around it once, go through it twice. I pull that nice and tight, and then that gets a really firm knot there. Going through the next pearl, down the pearl, and through the beads. And that's it. From here then, I'm going to go in with my thread zap or thread burner, take my thread and needle, preferably do this near a white pearl. I'm not sure why it came out near a colored bead there, but go in here and burn down that thread edge. When you burn down the thread edge, you want to do so that way it creates a nice flush edge, and by balling it up there on the side, you prevent it from coming out of the beads. And that finishes up this lovely, simple little heart bracelet. I love that it looks like hearts, but it is very easy to change up if you want to do it a little bit more elegant. I have a design coming up using it in some black and white. And also you could make it into a necklace because the right angle weave is very, very forgiving. Thanks so much for joining me in this heart patterned beaded bracelet. It's a really simple version of right angle weave, and I hope that you change it up, make it your own, and post pictures of it in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. Remember, if you haven't yet, subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. As always, thank you so much for joining, and I can't wait to see your own versions of this beaded heart bracelet.